Hey there, folks. How's it going? This is Pete Bickford. This is the ComicBase live stream. Welcome. Anyway, best British show on the internet. Unfortunately, today without our producer Greg Hecht in the house, he's off doing family things and hopefully having a terrific time with it. Anyway, I'm glad to see you all here. Thank you for everyone who could make it. For the next 60 minutes or so, we're going to be trying to do as many tech tippy things you didn't know how to do with ComicBase, secret things and so forth, answering your questions, whatever it takes to be as entertaining as we possibly can be for about 60 minutes until I go out and have a beer on this beautiful, unbelievable 70-degree day we have here on January 7th out here in just outside Nashville, Tennessee in Franklin. Anyway, welcome everyone. I want to say hi before we get going here. Looks like Agent of Camp is first in the house here. Welcome from sunny Florida. I hope everyone's having a great year. Rob Weinberg's joining us from Toledo, Ohio. New Year's wishes all around. We'll just stipulate that. Brian Stewart has an interesting one. He says that he's got a Jed situation here. I'm assuming that means Jed Clampett from the Beverly Hillbillies. Up through the ground came a bubbling crude, backing up my kitchen laundry. Luckily, way far away from his comic books. Otherwise, it's a rare 60+ degree in my area. Well, the weather sounds nice. The rest of it sounds like a bloody nightmare. Bubbling crude, which might be okay, or septic backup. Either way, it does not sound like fun. I wish you the best on that one, man. Anyway, Richard Scott's joining us here due to unforeseen circumstances and voiced PDX. A lot of sympathy out there in the chat for Brian there. D.A. Libby's joined us here from Roseville, California. Oh, hey, welcome, guys. And let's see here. And I think we should get on. Yeah, Agent Camp points out, Pete should be in a better mood now that Mark's back. And yes, indeed, I am. We have missed our Mark Castaneda, our person who makes everything work around here. He's been gone on paternity leave. He is a beautiful new baby boy, and he's now back. And wow, there's never been a more relieved guy on the planet than me, because as it turns out, it's almost like he does work, because when he's gone and suddenly I do all the work he did as well as my work, it turns out that's rather a lot. But yeah, so it was crazy today. We were putting together agendas and everything, and it's like, I don't think I have enough to keep me working till 9 at night tonight. This is crazy. What would that be like? So I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, let's get on with the live stream. Let me just go ahead and hide some windows here so I can see my show notes, and we will get onto it. Oh, before we do, though, some fun stuff here. Tyler T. joining us here from Selkirk, New York. Let me go ahead and make this a little larger here. And so some brief news. First of all, we are having a New Year's sale. We rarely do this, but we're doing it this year because we're just feeling bloody ready to rock in 2026. Last year, just a little behind the scenes state of mind kinds of stuff. All of last year, honestly, I felt like I'm trying to more or less move the aircraft carrier around in the lagoon. It is basically, we went through a major retooling, restructuring, rethinking of so much. I mean, the entire product line, all of our back end tools, so forth. We revisited a lot of technical debt issues and so forth, but really try to refocus the entire company on new line of products that were much more friendly to folks getting started and so forth, and really ready to rock out with the Metropolis release. So we got that all done, and I'm beyond stoked. And this year, honestly, I'm just ready to just go out and just kick ass and do amazing stuff. So feeling really positive about that. So one thing that we're doing is we're actually holding a New Year's sale. We often do a big sale at the end of the year. Here we're doing a big one at the beginning of the year. So for whatever reason, if you didn't manage to jump on lately, this is the perfect. Even this is the #1 issue for ComicBase. It's not. It's like the number 30 something issue, but think of it as like a new #1. It was like, if I were going to build the cover, that would be it. But it's a great time if you have ever been sitting there thinking, this is my time to get my collection organized and so forth. It has never been easier, whether you're coming in at the high end, the low end, middle end. If you only run on mobile devices, etc., we've got you covered. So do check us out. Go to comicbase.com, click on the link right on the main news item there, and you'll see that we are trying to make it easier than ever to jump in and get going. And honestly, if you if you've lost the story at some point and you want to get going, for the new year, get new pricing and so forth, also great time to get in there and save some money right now. So get on that. I would say get on it this week. We're not setting a firm end date to this one, but this week. So it's pretty much it. So that's about it. Oh, and Steve Asger, welcome to the house. We were just talking between Mark and I about like, oh, we haven't heard from Steve lately. We miss him. Let's see here. Maybe someone should whisper remarks here. Now would be a good time to ask for a raise. It's well, we've had all sorts of interesting work-related rebalancing discussions ever since I've been like, yeah. So Pete's been the guy who not only is doing the high-end stuff, but also been the guy who does all the scut work for the last couple of months. And suddenly we have lots of thoughts to share about what should be done in which ways. So to be continued, I'm certain, on any number of different levels. All right, other things going on in life. We are having the Human Computing Virtual Garage Sale. Not much to it. It's just honestly, New Year, starting the new year off as cleanly as humanly possible. All the things I ever yelled at anyone else about and saying, hey, why don't you throw this thing out there? What's this junk doing sitting around there? I'm like, take your own damn advice there, Bickford. So yes, we're actually getting rid of some stuff. Some of it's behind me. If you ever wanted to get, for instance, a beautiful Mac Mini 2018 version, the last version that could ever run Windows natively as well as Mac OS, because it had an i5 chip underneath it. But we have a number of interesting items like that. Mac Mini with 8 gigs RAM, 256 gig of SSD storage, i5 processor and whatnot. That is for the low price of $125 out the door, shipped to you. Just say the word and we will make that happen. We have a Chrome tablet which is currently charging downstairs. It's an early model. It's probably got, I don't know, it's probably dates to the late 20 teens probably. Was used as one of the first things we ever tested the Chrome version or the Android version of ComicBase tablet on. If you ever want to pick yourself up a little like book reader or whatever else, $20 takes that one home. $25, although I will have to ship, charge you $10 for shipping on that. We have 2 random barcode scanners, wireless. These are in the box still, the models with our testing notes for the vendors that we did not pick for the ComicBase barcode scanner. Both of these ones are rarely are ones that they actually passed qualification, but they failed out for different reasons. So we did not choose them. If you guys are interested in grabbing it, think of it as just a random, I don't guarantee it does anything in particular, barcode scanner. $20 each gets those. And honestly, if this stuff doesn't move by the end of the week, it's going in the garbage. So that's about it. There's also a free whiteboard because I'm upgrading my office for the next year. I'm getting one of those cool porcelain ones like we used to have in the old office. But unfortunately, a bunch of those got damaged in the move out to Tennessee, but I've had it. I can't live without a whiteboard in my life that works properly, and so the old whiteboard is going to be out on the curb. If anyone wants it for free and wants to stop by Franklin, just let me know. Knock on the door and we'll hand it to you. Other than that, that is the end of that one. If anyone's interested by any reason on any of this stuff, please send me a note, pbickford@human-computing.com. We will make that happen. But that's about it. Honestly, I don't know about you guys. I love throwing stuff out that isn't like earning its keep in my life anymore. It's just one of those things. It says Pete's been hitting the beer lately. I have not. That's coming right afterwards. But I am going to be out on the porch after this and pouring myself a tall draft of a Mexican pale at this point because it's just gorgeous. All right, let's get on to it. Tech support. So this is kind of a cheap way for me to sum up things that I have been getting as tech support requests over the last couple of weeks. As a lot of this is folks coming in new or people upgrading from old versions, so that's going to heavily bias my thinking on the subject on this one. But I want to give some answers to like some of the biggest tech support questions we've had of late, and hopefully this will be interesting to you guys. One thing I do want to do, on the other hand, is please put in the chat if you have a question you would like us to answer. I will prioritize those over pretty much everything else I was thinking about doing. I'll put to @ComicBase TV in the chat, and that helps me catch it as things are going on there, and I can hit that out as we go. All right, so let me see. Is there anything else we need to get to before we get down to it? No, I think it is ready to go. So tech tip number 1, get the latest version. All right, I can't overstate this one enough. This is the good and the bad of living in the modern world of comic, of software that we are living at the moment. In that, if you are, let me see if the switch is going to work to the PC. Will it? Let's see. That's the PC. That's the Mac. And okay, and here's the demo machine. My God, it's almost like I know what I'm doing. This is great. That, by the way, that's Dodger. He's downstairs below the range of the Dodger camp, so bear with us here. Sorry, guys. He's not. If he hops into the office, we'll put him on camera. But if he does not, if he just heads out for his walk, it'll be a Dodgerless day for us out here on the show. Anyway, but please do look when you are booting up ComicBase. If anything ever seems weird, or you're thinking, I wish this worked a different way, or whatever else, first thing to do. Step is go help about ComicBase and look at this version number down here. 26.0.9.3234 is the current version of ComicBase. If you're rocking anything less than that, before you call us up, before you ask for help, before you do anything else, the very first thing I'm going to tell you to do on all of that is go under, go to the ComicBase website, go to My Account, Registrations, download the latest version, or if you want to shortcut that process a little bit, I'm always showing this one, but I'm going to show it one more time. Under Preferences in ComicBase, make sure that when you have check for updates set, make it so it's each time a database is opened, which is basically every time you launch ComicBase, and check for interim updates is checked. If you've got those two things checked, then you're going to see every little bloody thing we've got going on there. And then if you just say check for updates, it'll tell you whether you have the very latest version of the software or not. And hopefully this one says, yes, you are current. All right, great. But yeah, we've done a lot of late in ComicBase to push lots and lots of fiddly little changes. If you notice that the version number is 3234 or something like that, that started at 1 when we did the first version of Metropolis, the current version of ComicBase 2026. So yes, we've had something like 3,000 builds of ComicBase since then, and every one of those builds is us making one attempt of one or more things to be a bit better than they were the last time out. You can tell that we're always cranking on the whole thing, and especially over the Christmas break, we had a chance to really put the screws to a lot of little lingering things that we'd been meaning to get around to. So if you even saw before the Christmas break, we were on build 2,900, and we're about 300 builds down the road since then. So, some things we actually broke along the way, like if you had trouble setting checkboxes for a couple days, that was us having what they call in the trade regressions, as in we fixed one thing while screwing up something else. But in general, it's been things where okay, yeah, that thing that we always wanted to get exactly this way is now working exactly the way we want there. So yeah, definitely do make sure before you do anything else with ComicBase, check, download, you've got the latest version. If you're still running versions from way in the way back, the ComicBase 2025, 2024, or so forth, make sure you go in there, if you're go to My Account and then Registrations, if you have a serial number for ComicBase 2026, make sure you download it. A lot of people have been calling us up, especially over the holiday break, say, yeah, I haven't been getting downloads for my ComicBase 2025. And it's yeah, because I know it's a little confusing. It's car model years. We're on the next model year, even though it's physically the calendar year 2025. We've been on ComicBase 2026 now for a couple, 3 months. And so you need to have the latest version of the software in order to be getting the content updates. So whenever you've got, if you have a current subscription to ComicBase, you get the program updates as well as the content updates as part of your subscription. And we actually try to make as much noise about it as we can when we launch a new version, saying, hey, new version's out, please, everyone grab it. But yeah, that's your cue. It's time to get off the old version and onto the new version, because after a grace period of some months, typically we no longer push any content updates for the older versions, even if they're still in subscription. So do get on that to ComicBase 2026. Make sure you've got the very latest version of that one, especially if anything had been a little bit squirrely for you, and then take it from there. And then that is the biggest tech tip of them all. Oh, and hey, Mike Beam is joining us here. Excellent. Agent de Camp says, my wife says, if you can throw stuff away, then so can I. I wouldn't feel called about that personally. It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't it feel great on a new year, just cleaning the slate down, just kind of saying, yeah, this was last year's problem, man. I'm over that. This is a bigger, better year. We're moving on. All right, so let's take it on to number 2, faster data entry. So I promised some tips on this one, and we have actually some of the things that we've been doing to make that a little bit cooler. Let me show you a couple of them right now. So all right, as you guys might know, let's see, I'm trying to memorize which one's which. This is the demo computer. Sorry, I just moved my monitors around right before the show here, so I'm trying to keep everything in line. All right, so as you guys probably know, the basic ways of getting data into ComicBase is you come over the grid and you can change things here, just set different conditions, whatever else. You can type different quantities. I want 3 of those. If I say my cover price, I want it to be $250. You can just type, right? Obviously, that's a good one. You guys also probably know that if one of the fun features in ComicBase, actually my favorite way of doing data entry, is if I have a bunch of stuff in a row, I can actually just click on it. Go down here. I can hold down the control key and choose different ranges and so forth. And if I don't have anything else selected, if I just punch the number on my keyboard from 1 to from 0 to 9, it will set that quantity for all those issues. So here I'm punching a 2, and it's a quantity 2 of all these ones. If I change quantity 1, it's quantity 1. You also can do, as well as that, if, let's say here I've got a bunch of quantity 1, and then here's quantity 3. You can actually say plus and minus. So if you just want to say, hey, I just want to add 1, I just pulled in someone's collection, I want to go and add those in right there. So that's adding 1, here's subtracting 1, and so forth, all the way down to, if I want to go ahead and zero it all out again, just punch a 0 and they're out of stock. All right, that's great. And this used to be super great back in the day. Back in the day being prior to about, say, 2014 or so, when the number of variants just went psychotic. So even when you went to an older title, like let's go to something like Fantastic Four, right? Sorry, caps lock. Fantastic Four. All right. Fantastic Four, right? An old title, right? How many variants and second printings and multiples? Oh, I see. Of Fantastic Four, the 1961 series, could there be? As it turns out, an insane amount. And I don't even have them all the covers downloaded in the demo version over here. But you see how, where once upon a time, this was this lovely series that ran 1, and then issue 2, and then issue 3. And that was great, because back in the day, there was this thing where they'll say, like, if I collect Fantastic Four and I say, hey, I've got issues 37 through 44, I could just highlight them all, punch a 1, put them into my collection at 1, and be done. And that was terrific. And now, because people have gone back in time and added a bajillion variants to all of that stuff, they've actually kind of taken away the utility of one of the coolest ways of doing anything in ComicBase, the one key issue entry, because you spend so much time holding down the control key while selecting around the ones you didn't want that it's almost easier just to type them straight into the grid, and that sucks. Well, one thing we did to make that a little bit easier is we expanded the definitions we use down here. Let me see if I can zoom in. So if you look down at the bottom here, you've got some things down in the info bar to say like how you want things displayed. Usually it's this grouped by titles as opposed to one big list. It says whether or not you want to hide or show newsstand issues and so forth. And then there's this one down here which is show items. Do you want to show all items? Do you want to show only the items you own? Or do you want to show owned and regular items? Now, what these were for is, and again, we've made them quite a bit more useful of late. What everyone does when they start using the program is they say, well, I just want a list of my stuff. And so they say, okay, great, that's easy enough. We'll just show your owned items. And then they come back up and they're here. They say, where'd all the stuff go? And the answer is, well, you didn't put it in your inventory yet, and so it's not there. And then we'd say, okay, what you could do is you could say, well, all right, well, show all the items. You could put some things in your inventory. Like, let's go ahead and highlight a few of these like this, punch them in, put quantity 1, and then you could say, all right, just show me the things I own. Okay, easy enough. We'll show your owned items. And you say, all right, whoops. I guess it didn't get a chance to update those yet. Okay, so here we are over, say, Doctor Who. So here, sorry, I just bounced to a completely different title. So here's all the owned issues of Doctor Who in this collection. Well, that's great, but what do I do about every other thing? And the answer on that one is, well, you wind up constantly bouncing back and forth between the owned issues and the not owned issues, and it kind of gets really old fast. I mean, it's great as a proof that you're holding onto my data and that I'm making a list, but because you always have to move it back out of that into showing all the issues in order for it to redraw the list, that winds up being less fun than you might think. So one way that this works is the middle option. Let's go back to Fantastic Four here. So here you see that you've got Fantastic Four, and what I really want to see is issue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it's getting messed up by the idea that we have all these second printings, these, the Golden Records version, cover A, B, C, D, E, F, G. These are all different facsimile versions and so forth. And it's getting in my way of just saying, look, I've been a Fantastic Four collector forever. I just want to be able to say I've got issues 6 through 15. Well, one way I can do that is if I go down here and if I say show owned plus regular items. Used to be that regular items were just the ones that didn't have a variant. We expanded this recently, so also filters out anything that's a multiple printing, anything that's a special edition, anything that's a collected book, and so forth. And so now we get exactly what you kind of expect, which is, hey, wait, here's all the regular issues of Fantastic Four. And as a result, now I can just go down here, down the list like this, and put those in stock, and boom, I'm good to go. And you can put your stuff. If you've got a collection that, where you haven't been a big variant guy, especially back in the day, and if, for instance, you're even going back and you have an older style collection and you want to skip past all the reprints and the variants and the facsimile editions that have been kind of cluttering up your perfect collection before then, show owned plus regular is perfectly great way of going these days. Really, it's a good way to make one key issue entry much more useful than it was before, because again, like we've tightened down the definition of what counts as a regular issue. It's not just about variants now. Now we included the printings and the different types. Just make sure, don't do the thing that people do, which is when you sit there and you say, but I can't find the facsimile edition, I can't find the newsstand edition, things like that. First thing to check, make sure you don't have your view settings down here set to filter that out. Because if you did, like a guy reach out to me just recently saying, hey, yeah, you're doing great and everything, but I can't find any of the newsstand editions, except of course the default, and you get asked this once when you first start the program, but then you immediately forget about it because we're human, is it says, did you want to hide or show newsstand editions? And the default on that one is, if you don't say otherwise, is to hide the newsstand edition. So you've done that, and then you forget about it, but then you bitch at us and say, well, where's the newsstand editions? And then you get angry. Don't get angry. First, check your newsstand. Check your view settings first of all to make sure that you're not setting things to be hidden before you say where are they. So anyway, that's a thing. All right, that is number one. Oh wait, Agent of Cap asks, does the show regular items include the books that start at 1A but not plain 1? No, so show regular items nowadays, let me go ahead and switch full screen now so I don't confuse myself by looking at myself in two different places. Show regular items now is defined as anything that's a regular issue number with no variation, so variation code is nothing, and the special comic type is nothing. So in other words, it's not going to show books, it's not going to show special editions, it's not going to show annuals, so forth. But it's also not going to show second printings, it's not going to show variants, it's not going to show, second version gold, new third edition annuals. It's just it's only going to show things that have a regular edition. So this raises a really great question with DC Comics. So you guys might have noticed of late that Marvel Comics, staying positive again this year, God bless their little hearts over at Marvel Comics. They put out 73 million variants for everything, but they still, when they have the solicitations, designate one thing is, here's the regular issue number 34. They actually still do that. They are traditionalists at heart or something, or maybe just whoever is doing the solicitations couldn't get off the old system, whatever it is, they still do that. DC, unfortunately, with the exception of literally things like Scooby-Doo mysteries, in a typical month will put out no things that are listed as a regular issue. So if you're looking to say, I switched this to owned issues only and I'm a DC collector, you are going to be sad because there are no regular issues anymore for DC Comics. There's A's, B's, C's, D's, E's, and F's of different levels of scarcity, but DC, at least at the moment, looking at as of last month's solicitations, for March 2026 and so forth, their current style is they don't actually designate anything as a regular issue anymore, with the exception of, I think there were 8 things in the entire month of January of solicitations that were marked as regular issues of any sort. The variant situation has gotten that nuts. Marvel, however, whatever feelings we may have about Marvel and variants and things like that, at least they're saying there's a regular issue number 34. So anyway, encourage them or don't encourage them, as you will. All right. Let's see. Steve Dessinger says, is the line on the bottom shown by default? If not, how is it displayed? Excellent. Terrific question. Let me switch back to that camera. Demo machine. Yes, that's the one. And switch to keyboard. So that guy right over here, that was something I believe we added 1 or 2 years ago. It's called the status bar, but it is shown by default. So if you go into the view menu and you say show status bar, you see it's checked right there. Let me go ahead and zoom in on that. And you can uncheck it if you like, and then it will go away and you reclaim a critical 3/8 of an inch of screen space. But on the other hand, you give up a bunch of really cool stuff like easy access to these controls. By the way, you can get to these controls as well through the view menu, but they're it's nicer to have them just as controls right down there. Plus, if you've got the status bar highlighted, it does cool things like saying, hey, you have 5 issues selected, and however many of them are in stock. It'll do totaling for you as you go, and neat stuff like that. So the status bar is a thing that's well worth having on. Another thing that's well worth having on here is the graph on the right. So while you're checking your view settings, go under here under the graph and say include value graph if you can. This is something that used to fight for screen space pretty hard in the first several versions of the ComicBase 2020 series. And so it used to be you could drag this thing up so far that there literally would not be room to show this, because it was trying to leave all this space from here to here open to show the title description. We did some relayout on the whole thing so that no matter how small you make the top, it'll never be so small that it's impossible to show the graph. But if you ever sized your window up in the past such that there was no room for the graph, then it turned off the graph because there was no room. So you might want to turn it back on again if it's turned off for you. So it includes a value graph. The value graph does a couple neat things. One of them is it will tell you, how things have been going over time on something. But the other thing it does is it gives you really quick access to things like saying, hey, I'm looking for a copy of, the facsimile edition of Fantastic Four number 6B or something, 6A or whatever else. Has anyone got one? Actually, a terrible example of that, because it turns out no one's got one for sale on that. I think is that one reasonably new, but anyway, it'll do things like saying, "Hey, how many people have got something? Got a copy of that available for sale on Atomic Avenue or something?" And here, early versions of Fantastic Four apparently in hard supply right now on the system. Let me see what they've got, coming later on. Okay, so if I'm looking to fill in Fantastic Four number 59, there's 2 copies between $5 and $18. And if you click over there on them, it'll take them there, and you can actually fill gaps in your collection as you go. That's pretty neat, and it gives you a real-time check on how things are doing. So not a bad thing to do. I'm going to say an excellent use of your precious screen space. All right, moving on. Let me see here. Agent Camp says, for instance, DCKO starts at 1A. Sorry, there are literally no regular editions of DCKO. So if you've got show only regular editions open, then it will show nothing unless you happen to own them. So write letters to DC, man. For that, I'm going to say, for whatever you think, CB Cebulski, that whoever is in charge of deciding that there was a regular issue of a given comic book over at Marvel, I'm going to say that was a commendable decision. All right, so that is the end of that question. Let's move on to other things. Patching an old database. All right, this comes up a fair amount. Again, we just went through a big upgrade cycle here where, a lot of people had ComicBase 2025 were waiting for the sale, and they upgraded to ComicBase 2026. Some people came in, hadn't been upgrading in a very long time, and so forth. When you upgrade from one version to the next of ComicBase, we basically since ComicBase 10, have been pretty good about allowing you to upgrade in place. Prior to ComicBase 10, if you have like a really old version of ComicBase, like ComicBase 6, there's some of those kicking around out there in the world. In order to move from one version to the new version of those things, you literally had to export the data out of the old version and import it into the new version. We have gotten very, very advanced these days about being able to upgrade you in place. In other words, all you got to do is launch the new version of ComicBase, let it grind for a bit. It will do all the database updates and all the backend tables, restructuring this, that, and the other thing. You won't believe how much stuff it's checking as it goes there. And that's also why if the very first time that you launch, if you're coming in from a much older version of ComicBase, it takes quite a bit longer to open the database the very first time. And then the second time you open it, just goes bam right up. But what it's doing that very first time is checking every single thing structurally that's changed about the database, new fields that have been entered, new definitions of things, so forth. That's not even the content, but we track much more stuff than we used to about comics and things like that. We lay out new indexes to make things faster and so forth. And all that happens the very first time you launch the program. Now, it is possible, especially if you're in the middle of an upgrade and or something went wrong for you, or you started one thing and something else got in your way and you got there. You can get into a state where it's kind of like it thinks it's upgraded something yet, but then you start getting errors because it said, yeah, there's that thing that we expected here to be in this version because it says you're running a version 26 database, but it doesn't seem to be here. So you'd get like an SQL error saying, hey, there's a missing field. Where is it? Should that ever happen to you? And most people, this will never happen to you, but should that ever happen, and you ever need to force it to once again look back at every single thing in your database and make sure everything has been updated the way it should be. The way to do that is hold down the control key on your keyboard. So with ComicBase closed, hold down the control key and launch ComicBase, and then hold that control key down until you see a message from ComicBase saying, hey, did you want to rebuild your indexes? Now, indexes, one of the things that can be rebuilt, but the main thing it did is you invoked essentially an override on the version checking in ComicBase, which says, yeah, I know this guy says he has a version 26 database. Don't trust any of it. Go and check everything again. At which point it'll go through every one of the tables that have ever had a structure change in it, which is most of them over all the years. And it'll say, okay, so we expected there to be a newspapers table here. Yeah, when ComicBase 2020 first launched, there was no newspapers. When, for instance, there was no high value and mid value CGC breakdowns prior to ComicBase 2025. There were no Penguin Random House or Lunar codes prior to the last couple versions of ComicBase. We're adding stuff all the time. And if you ever get a note saying, hey, I can't find this field, something like that happened, have it recheck your database's setup structure. Very easily done, and really typically only takes like a minute or two. And then you're guaranteed by the time it's done with that check that everything it's been double checked, it's ship shape, and you're ready to go. Raising an obvious question, well, that sounds great, but why make us hold down the control key? Why don't you guys validate that every single time we launch the database? Mostly because most people will never have this happen to them ever. It more or less relies on you having like skipped updates or having had something go wrong for you at some point in the past that never quite got set right. And so most people, especially if you've been keeping up with the program, this will have never been a thing for you. Kind of like if you imagine sometimes if you use a browser like Chrome or Brave, most of the time it just auto updates in place. Every once in a while it says, yeah, I'm so old I can't auto update. I need you to uninstall and reinstall. It's kind of equivalent to that, except you don't need to go to that much trouble. You just need to hold down the control key. But what it does then is it does take an extra minute or two of checking in order to make sure everything's good, and then it puts back anything that would need to be done. But we don't want to add that extra several seconds every single time you launch the database, because why? If we can launch in make the whole thing up and running in 3-4 seconds, I'd rather have that than have it up and running in 10 seconds, because your life, your time is precious. Let's just keep this rolling. All right, let me see here. Ed says, happy 2 year and my fellow comic basers. When can we expect the newest version of the ComicBase phone app to be released? It is in progress. You should see it shortly. There is a 26.0.3 version of the ComicBase app. It's ready on Android. I believe it might even be out right now. I can't remember. There was a minor bug in caching of reports for multiple databases. Again, one of these things that like you may have never noticed. But thank you, Ed. I believe was one of the people who reported that one to us. We were overly aggressive in trying to make the mobile app fast. So we didn't catch when you would switch databases and reload your report list as often as we should have. So that's been updated in the latest version. It's submitted to both stores on this one, and you should see it shortly. Look for it next couple days probably. But yeah, minor tweaks. We're always at them. All right, let's see here. DC's added variant cover by, and the regular item just says cover by. Maybe, it's funny because when you're actually parsing the sheets as they come in, so we get the stuff fed to us directly by Penguin Random House and Lunar Publications. I want to say DC's primarily through Lunar. And a lot of that blah, blah, blah cover by stuff is actually us doing that. We're piecing together little bits of the solicitation and saying, well, this is, we know the cover artist is this guy. And even though you said it was Tula Lote, we know you said it by Lyrics Lee or something like that. We know that that's really, or Stanley, quote, Art Germ Lau, right? It might just say Art Germ. We know that his official name is Stanley Art Germ Lau. We'll put that together with something else, a little scrap of information you had that says something like foil, and it'll become foil cover, whatever we had to designate it, foil cover B by, Stanley Art Germ Lau. That's actually us doing most of that work. Typically, DC isn't saying regular. What they're supposed to do, and again, if you guys would read your own bloody sheets, I say this is the guy who's been taken over for the other guy who used to do this work because I have opinions all of a sudden. No, they have a number of things in the field which says whether or not the thing's a variant or what the variant sequence number is, and they're not using them the way they should. And honestly, they're using them in a way typically that is not possible to determine whether the A, the B, the C, the D, whether any one of those was meant to be the canonical cover. What it really looks like, because it mostly is these days, is that there's a number of common variants which are arranged more or less randomly by their barcode. So if you looked at the very last digit of the barcode, if the last two numbers are 1-1 of the very last part of it, typically that means it's the first printing first cover is typically how that would go. So if you look at that by Marvel will accompany that by issue number 1, and they will have the one that's 2-1, which is the second edition of the first printing. Marvel will typically call that the A cover. They will actually say A cover. DC will have called the first one A, the second one B, but because they don't make a distinction anywhere else on the form, it kind of winds up being random by whatever the ordering thing is, and the retailer is looking at that also orders accordingly. They say, oh, Tula Lute, I like Tula Lute. There's just A, B, C, D, E covers. Those are all the standard ones. I guess I'll choose the one that looks the best to me and buy more of those. There's nothing to tell the retailer, oh yeah, I should buy more of the regular cover, because there's a whole bunch of my customers who just want the regular thing. And so, yeah, that's if they ever get to the point where they're consistent and they can up their game so we can make regular covers again, I want that personally. So if we can make that happen, absolutely. Like I say, write your local editor, and we'll take it from there. DC Comic List cover artists in the upcoming now. Yeah, we do, and we use that information when they've got it. Okay, I think we beat that aspect of the conversation to death. Okay, moving on for that. So patching up an old database, the number one big hit on that one is hold down the control key. If you ever need it to, if you're ever getting any kind of weird errors about, missing fields or things like that, hold down control, just let it recheck your database. Doesn't hurt anything. Nothing can go wrong on that score. The other thing you'll notice if you hold down the control key long enough is it'll also kind of show you some hidden options that we have during rebuild. So you can do things like allow it to automatically rebuild all your indexes, which, I don't know, if your programmer was acting pokey for no apparent reason, it's a thing you could try. Almost certainly not necessary, but there are people in the world who've had damaged indexes, and so that's why the feature's in there. Basically, indexes is exactly like the index in a book. It goes through and it figures out, all right, if I need to get to issue number 37 of Fallen Heroes, from whoever, this is how I quickly get there. It rebuilds those quick index markers, so it doesn't have to do a long search. And so if searching ever gets really pokey, that might possibly, if nothing else is wrong on your computer, be a sign that something went wrong with an index. So holding down control long enough will offer you that option as well. All right, other things, better updates. Right, so a couple things, which I hope to God I don't come off as just like someone who's bitching at my own customers, because I whatever you guys should know about me at this point, you should know that like we're in business because you guys patronize us, and I don't want to be the guy who's criticizing. I want to be the guy who says like, hey, like if something we're doing here is causing you woe, here's some ways to not run to woe is what I mean by this. And one of the things that we've gotten, a little bit of feedback on is people have come in from much older versions who haven't been doing these settings, and then they wonder why it isn't working the way they thought it would work. And so again, I don't mean this as a criticism. It's means just as this might help you. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and I'm going to say check for updates here. What that does is it forces it to, even though it's got the current update, to offer to download the most recent update. Again, I just want to be able to show you the screen. So this is the update options. You see this one every single time you download the program or you download an update for the week. And there's a few things in here. It's worth having a quick look at your settings as you go and doing this. Now, by the way, if you ever use the quick start in ComicBase, that getting started thing is, it starts up as a series of black and white screens. I think there's 3 of them that say, hey, a couple things before we get going. Do you want to set up this way? Because we're trying really, really hard to get you to set it up the way we want you. That's what that whole thing was about, was getting your permission to set some preferences the way we wanted them set. The reason we have to beg you, why don't we just set them that way ourselves, is because some of these things involve overwriting data. You never overwrite data without asking the user, hey, is it okay if we overwrite data? So one of them is, hey, can we make corrections when we find them to existing data? And so what that does is it basically checks all of these fields right here. So whether or not when you download an update, do you want to allow corrections to existing cover dates, storylines, cover prices, creator credits, and item descriptions, and series info and descriptions. I would generally say for everyone who's looking at this, check every single one of those. The reason we make the corrections is because we found something, we either filled in information, but more importantly, we found, hey, we didn't spell this guy's name right. It turned out that this guy was meant to work on the book, but it turns out they had a substitute person at the last minute, and so it was somebody else. We were misinformed about who did the cover. Whatever the deal is, we want to be able to fix our mistakes. And for what's worth, if you guys get the idea that there's a lot of information rocking through ComicBase every week, ran the numbers on it. So ComicBase, just in case you just want to get the scope of the effort on here, there's over 5 million items in ComicBase. There's typically around 100 pieces of information for every one of those items. So do the math on that one. We're talking about a lot of stuff. We're talking about the kind of money that the federal government loses in daycare operations and stuff like that. Anyway, just think of a large number. That's the number. Anyway, so but with all that, it means that some stuff is going to be wrong, and the thing that fixes that is you allow us to make corrections. So please do allow us to make corrections when we can. Check all these guys off. It will help. All right, something you might want to, and this, by the way, is by default never checked, but you might want to lock your item notes, which is to say, notes are a weird field because the information in the notes field stacks. So if we put, if we had that this is the first appearance of Swamp Thing, and you said it's also the first appearance of, John Swamp Thing's buddy, whatever else. So what'll happen in that case is you'll see both notes together. You'll see first appearance of Swamp Thing, first thing in John the Swamp Thing's buddy. And if someone else comes in later and says, and it's also, the first appearance of Cassie, John's, dog, it'll say all 3 things. There may come a time, especially if people get wordy, and that I hate the wordy part, where they could say things, where they say the same thing, first appearance of Swamp Thing's dog, first thing appearance of Cassie's buddy's dog, and you wind up with everything kind of mushed in the whole thing, and it can get to be kind of a mess. One of the things we've been doing, you might have noticed over the last 7 8 years, is taking things out of the notes field and giving them their own dedicated fields to try to keep the clutter down. But if you ever want to put things in the notes field and never have us touch them at all, consider hitting lock item notes, which basically doesn't allow us to update or add any new information to your notes field. It means that your notes field, the only person who can change is you. It's a thing worth considering. In general, I don't leave that checked for my stuff, but it's a fair point. Set it to do new picture downloading. This is another question that comes up very frequently is, hey, how do I download the pictures off discs and things like that? And my standard advice on that these days, there's almost 1.1 million pictures. Actually, I think there's a stupid number of pictures in ComicBase right now. I believe is it north of 1.1 million now? I've actually forgotten. But it's think of a really large number. That's the number. To get that much stuff onto any finite number of physical media, including the Blu-rays on the 4K, we have to do stupid amounts of image compression, to the point where even on the Blu-ray, I look at it and say, that image look a little rough. Whereas if you look at the uncompressed version, it's gorgeous and beautiful and lovely. By the way, if you think it's just us, it's not. Netflix, Amazon, all those guys are taking, if you have a really nice TV set and you're looking at the image that comes by, think of like Lord of the Rings, like some really beautiful movie. If you freeze frame it on the image that came off of your 4K UHD version of it, and then you take the same thing and you somehow freeze frame it, the same TV, the same whatever else, but you freeze frame it when you're streaming the Amazon 4K version. If you could take a picture of those two screens side by side, you'd be horrified. The only thing that makes it so you don't notice it all is because the image keeps moving and you're caught up in the story. But they do so much compression to fit the things over the network that it's absolutely terrible compared to the DVD. Ironically, we have the opposite problem. We have so many things we're trying to do. You're only streaming one movie at a time, but we're trying to give you like 1.1 million pictures. In order to fit those onto even a couple of Blu-rays, much less 4 DVDs, we have to squish those suckers so hard to get them onto the disc. You can't believe the degradation in quality. It's the point where, it's still the image, but it's compared to the original, it's nasty. Whereas if you're just looking at pictures in ComicBase and we know that our servers have all 1.1 million of them, then they take the better part of a terabyte to store. But if you're looking at a particular picture in ComicBase, if you just click on it, we do this magic trick I've showed you a dozen times now, where in the space of an eye blink, we take the small thumbnail that we had in there that we were showing you in the grid, and we swap it for the full resolution, really nice version that we had on our server. And you do it just in the blink of an eye as you were looking at it. But because we only have to do that, we don't have to do it for all 1.1 million images. We only have to do it for the ones that you are looking at. We can bring down a really beautiful image for things because we have unlimited back end on our servers to show that stuff. So the thing you want to do, really, the thing I'm saying with all of this is, don't install off the disk. Just don't. And honestly, probably we're not going to do the discs again after this. So this is probably the last hurrah for those. I'm going to miss them too, but it's just we have too much content and there's not enough space on the discs to make it meaningful. What you want to do really when you install is you want to do the default. You want to let the program install and just download the thumbnails, which is these little 256 pixel tall versions of everything. But then that also turns on the settings so that anytime you actually look at one of those, it automatically pulls down the high res, really very low compression rate version of the whole thing. So you really get to see the thing far better than you would ever see it, even on the Blu-ray version. So whatever version of ComicBase you're using, whether it's the 4K, the archive, etc., don't install physical disc images. It's not the win anymore. Once upon a time it is not anymore. It probably hasn't been true for a decade, but it's definitely not true today because there's just so much content we're doing here. Just install off the web. That's really the way I would tell anybody, unless you have very special circumstances. Like I live in the area that has no internet. At which point it's better than nothing to install off the disk, but it's not great. So I wouldn't do it. So bring us back to the settings here. When set these just like this: automatically download pictures for new releases. Go ahead and say, give me the fastest download with the least disk space, which says basically when you're downloading new pictures, bring down the thumbnails. Don't bring down the high res ones right away, because great many of the thumbnails, because we push like 6,000 pictures a week at this point, a great many of those you will never actually be interested in. Wait till the moment you're actually interested in and let ComicBase swap them on the fly for you for larger versions. This will take down your download speed, it'll save you disk space, and you still get actually a nicer version if you just wait. Um, uh, Allow it to replace smaller pictures. I'd say that's always a win. If we have a larger picture or something when you're downloading it and you've got a smaller one, I like it. Unless the only time I would say don't, check this is if you had somehow had smaller versions on your disk of things where it's unique to you, like it's a picture of your book and you never want that touched. At which point, don't allow it to replace. Then you want your picture. Even better yet, take a really high res version of your thing, and then it's never an issue, right? And lastly, down here at the bottom, though, do check, very important, remove obsolete series if they have no items in stock. What the heck does that mean, Bickford? What that means is, let's say, and I'm getting, again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you guys doing this, but he's in a weird situation where he hadn't updated for a while, and we're kind of going round and round a little bit about like, hey, you should fix this. And then I'm looking at the version of the master database and say it's actually been fixed for a number of years, but he hadn't updated during that time. And so he still has the old information. He thinks that we're jerks for not fixing it. We had actually fixed it, but it doesn't look like we fixed it because you hadn't rushed the old one out. Especially this comes out when things like, sometimes like with Marvel, but sometimes people publish so very many variants of a particular issue that people kind of get lost. By the time you've got to the 47th version of Venom number 11, no one can kind of figure out whether the chalk line version of the variant of the one with the Mary Jane holding the clipboard on the thing versus the one where it hadn't filled in the titles, because yes, that was actually a meaningful difference in the variant. That was the A and the B versions, and then somebody else might have gone there, not seen that, and submitted it as the version 47 version, which turns out it's redundant with one of the earlier versions. We will actually go, and if we discover that somehow, we will go ahead and blow away the one that was redundant at the end. But you won't know that we blew it away if you still have the obsolete stuff in your database. So that's a real thing that happened. Again, it's not meant as a criticism. I'm just trying to make things smoother for you if this is happening to you. So for series that where they came out under a different name, but they didn't ship that way. Sometimes they change names, and also individual items. If we find out that a particular variant didn't come out, or didn't come out the way we said it was going to be, or whatever else, allow us to remove them if it turns out they were in your database and it doesn't have inventory attached to it. In other words, you hadn't set that its quantity is in stock. Look, if you I have 2 copies of this thing and they're in very fine, we're never touching that. It doesn't matter if we think it's obsolete. It's in your database. We're not screwing with your database. That's not a thing that happens. But if you haven't put it in there already, allow us to get rid of junk. You're going to be happy that you did. Whether or not you exclude material titles from the database, personal preference, do what makes sense to you, and then automatically match unknown items to their official designations when possible. In general, I'm going to say it's a big win. It typically is doing a lot with the barcode to make sure that if it turns out that the title was moved over here, but it was really called this, it allows us, after the update, to automatically put things where they should be without you getting a whole lot of orphaned items in your database. So in general, I'm going to say that's a win, but feel free to look at it and make your own decision on this one. But that would be my suggestions for when you do updates of how to set your settings. All right. And as usual, I've been talking long on this one, so I'm not going to get to half the things I wanted to talk about. Let me do a quick check of the chat, because when I talk long, I also don't notice the chat. All right, let's see here. UPC. Oh no, Pete hates us. No, I don't hate anyone. It's just I'm trying to help. Look, ComicBase is. I'll be the first to say it. It's an involved program. we want it to be able to do complicated things with complicated data and not treat the whole thing as if it's one big button. I mean, yes, you can have successful programs that treat the whole thing like, like everything is the same thing. Like, all comics are this, that don't, worry about variants and newsstand editions and grades and things like that. You can make the problem very simple as long as you ignore most of the fine points of the problem, or don't address them and things like that. ComicBase, as you guys certainly know by now, is taking the comic book collecting thing very seriously. But also, if you're a retail owner or whatever else, if you have exposure to retail, you will know that the comic book data set is the most complicated data set you will ever have the interesting time of having in your life. I used to do some consulting work for Gap brands, so I know something, for instance, about how many types of white athletic chino are in a typical Gap store, and in how many sizes, and what's the total number of SKUs, stock keeping units, that a whole entire Gap store will have in it, and it's a number like 5,000. The number of comic books, in just comic books, we're expected to deal with is like 1.3 million, and they ship 10,000, give or take, every new month. It's absolutely insane how complicated we've made the business of comic collecting. Nothing else that I can think of offhand is as complicated, but also as interesting and as rich and as interesting to know. There's a lot of neat little twisty bits about the whole field, but yes, they do involve certain complexities. So I'm not trying to be like, hey, you hit the wrong option, I'm mad at you, or anything like that. Just, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, ComicBase is probably never going to be one of those programs that, like, any idiot can use everything perfectly the very first time you look at it, because there's only one big button you can ever press. It's never going to be that kind of program, because we take the whole thing seriously. So as a result, our whole battle is, how do we give you all the flexibility to deal with all this stuff, while at the same time keeping the level of perceived complexity very low. But no matter what we try, there will be a little bit of a learning curve, and if you learn a few things, turns out that you can use them again and again. They become very powerful, and hopefully that helps you with that stuff. But this is some of the big tips that maybe aren't obvious at first glance, that I'm hoping that something like this live stream can point people to. All right, moving on. Okay, and speaking of that, faster data entry, some quick things about how you do data entry. And this goes down into the realm of things that not everyone knows about, but once you know about it, you're like, oh, hey, that's pretty neat. Some really common things about how they call it the modifier keys, but how those interact with selections. So, when you have a grid here, let me go ahead and, just select a bunch of stuff right now. I'm going to say download covers, just because it always bugs me when I don't see cover images for things I know we have covers on. Okay, great. All right. So you guys all know, if I click on the far left here, it highlights the whole line, right? If I click here, I'm editing that cell, right? So if I want to talk about what, issue 9A, and I want to see things related to issue 9A, I got to actually highlight this far left thing here to talk about issue 9A. From there, by the way, if I right click, I can see it's called a context menu, all the things I could be doing with that line. I could be duplicating, I could be downloading covers, I could be doing all the things, right? Whereas if I click just in a particular place, like let's say I highlight these 3 cells right here, I can't know with as much certainty where I mean to be going on the whole thing, and you'll see a bunch of those items aren't lit anymore. And so if you want to highlight things that involve the whole issue, typically highlighting by clicking at the far left is the way to go. With that said, if you look down at your keyboard, if I just click it and I drag, I can drag a range out. But what if I want these ones from here to here, but then I want to skip over A10, A, B, C, and I want to pick it up over at 11? Well, if I click and I drag down there, I lost my first thing. That's not what I wanted. I wanted all of them. So what you do is, if you hold down the first bunch, I click and I drag those ones right there, and then I hold down the control key while I click the next bunch, it actually will do what's called discontiguous selection. It allows me to have 2 different ranges that aren't connected to each other, that are all open at the same time. And from here, I can do one key, issue entry, I can do quick changes, I can do so forth. But that's the control key. And the cool thing is, you'll realize is that every list in the program works the same way. If I want to select one thing, click, click and drag, etc. Hold down the control key, and that does discontiguous selection. You'll find out that you lose control probably, if you're like me, more than almost anything else. Well, one thing you can do, on the other hand, there's also shift clicking. So let's say I want to go here, 9C, and I want to go all the way down here, and I want to get every single thing in between. Well, I don't want to sit there, click and drag all day long, and while that goes. No, but if I hold down the the shift click after I I select the first part and I hold down shift and I click there, it selects everything in between automatically. And you can do that in combination with control to say, well, I really still didn't want those ones over here, and you can discontiguously select those guys and so forth. But yeah, shift it will do a range, drag will drag out a range, control key discontiguous selection. Again, every list in the program you'll see works exactly the same way. It will help you a lot, and you can also apply it across the sort of thing. If I want to highlight a bunch of things here, and then I also want to apply a bunch of things here, yes, control key works exactly the same way for discontiguous selection. All right. Last thing I'm going to say for today, because I have a very involved one about parallels and so forth, and I apologize to Rob Weinberg, who forced me to figure out how to do that one. We'll have to catch that one on a future episode. But I do want to quickly talk about clearing out thumbnails. All right, so all right, let's talk a little bit about some mechanics here about how this stuff works. Now, you might notice as I'm clicking down here, like I click down here, and if I click over here, that it kind of fills in as I'm going. Well, what's doing here is the grid is actually kind of figuring out, oh, hey, yeah, he's clicked on that thing. Let me quickly check and see if I've got a bigger picture for that thing he just looked at. And so I click on it here, even though this thing didn't have a picture a minute ago, now it's got a beautiful 4K picture of it right there, because it did it, just like I said, in that heartbeat moment between when I was looking at the thumbnail down here and when I clicked on it, it downloaded in that second this 4K image of it, but until that moment it wasn't there. Where do these pictures live? Well, if I right click up here on this area here and look at it, and I say show picture file, it'll show that all these pictures are living in different places on my disk. Very involved picture structure here. It's in your documents folder, human computing, pictures sorted by the publisher's first name, and then the first, if it's Marvel, DC, Image, or Dark Horse, then it'll be the first name of the title, and then the title, and then we're going to see all these files that are like named after the issue numbers. And if you look at these issues on here, like say issue number 305, which I don't think I played with yet, if let's just pull up properties on here, which are right there. If you look at this thing, it's a teeny file. It's 7K in size, right? I mean, that's nothing. It's probably only, it's practically only that size just because it had to. But now let's go to issue 305 again. Oh, by the way, here's another tip for you. If I want to bounce quickly to a particular issue on the whole thing, hit F3 on your keyboard. That's the jump key. You also can go into the edit menu and choose jump, but hey, the whole point here is I want to not go hunting in menus. So here's issue 305, right? And once again, I looked at it just now, but there it is. And you see that doesn't look like an 8K image. And sure enough, if I look back at this, at the source folder right now that I've actually looked at it, let's scroll down to where 305 was and look at it again. 305 right here. Now, when I look at the properties of it, it is now a 213K file. So I gave up nothing in terms of my speed of use on the whole thing. I'm using very, very minimal disk space because all these other ones are still teeny images because I haven't ever had cause to want to see them large. But the second I want to see them large, there really was no delay that it really is perceptible on anything like a decent internet connection. And so, I mean, that's, again, why I would definitely say don't download images from the disks anymore. It just doesn't make sense. This is definitely the way to go. All right. But one thing about that, though, is let's talk about how these thumbnail images came from. See this 305 and 305 newsstand and so forth. Where are these images, right? Well, it turns out this little tiny 256 tall image here, this thing right here doesn't even exist in the picture folder. That's the base picture folder is this guy right here. But there's a secondary place where we stash images of different sizes, and we use them so that we can let you so basically when you go to a new title, we've already got pre-built all the pictures for that title at the size we want. We don't have to go make them, later on. Like, see how quickly, if I went to the Canadian edition of Fantastic Four, see how fast that list drew? And, here's Brown. This thing has never been to these issues. And it's able to draw this right away. The reason it's able to draw these this fast is because the thumbnails themselves are stashed. And the place they're stashed, and let me go ahead and I'll show you where the pictures are, but then I'll show you where the thumbnails are. So the pictures live down here in the Human Computing Pictures M Marvel blah, blah, blah folder. Let's bounce up to the Human Computing folder here in Public Documents. So you'll notice that along with pictures, there's this other folder called Thumbnails. And what Thumbnails has got in it is it's broken down by sizes, 32 pixels tall, 48 pixels tall, 256 pixels tall, whatever sizes you've ever had cause to use during the time using the program, it'll have a folder based after that. But here's the cool part. I can blow them all away. So here it's just going to delete, I don't know, what have we got here? Well, so far, 20,000. Be really kind of annoying if there were like 300,000 thumbnails in here, but anyway, you can actually with absolute impunity blow away all the thumbnails in ComicBase, and you will lose absolutely nothing except a tiny fraction of a second when you first are trying to go to something with lists. So there, I just blew away 78,000 files on that whole thing. All right, so what's going on right now? So now, if I go to the next grid, all right, okay, and now those thumbnails they're gone now. Now, when I go to the next one, you'll notice this is just, you couldn't even see it, but it's just a little tiny bit slower. And what it did during the time it took me to do the thing is it went down there, went to all these guys right here, generated the thumbnail, and then brought down that image, and so it could make the grid drawing much better. By the way, have a quick look. Let's see if you can catch it. I'll zoom the screen in. All right. Here's the thumbnail for Fantastic Four Editions Heritage #2. And you see, okay, I get an idea what the cover looks like and so forth. All right. Now I'm going to touch it. I'm just going to go and select it here. I'm not going to do anything much on it. In that fraction of a second that it took me to do that thing, you might even notice that the thumbnail itself got better looking, and also download the 4K, the 4K version if one was available of this one right here. It happened that quickly. I think this one here, -- will probably be a little more visible. Have a really good look here at the #5 looks. Actually, that wasn't that visible. Here I can see I'm seeing like a couple pixels flip places as I do this one, but it's never as much as I think it would be. Anyway, but yeah, so the thing I meant to say about that is the thumbnails you can blow them away with impunity. Why would I want to blow them away? I mean, am I just cleaning up my disk? Do I just like having less stuff on there? The reason you might want to blow them away is because you can get into a situation where we had an old picture of something, and you somehow never got the new picture. You never downloaded the new picture. You never thought to do it or whatever else. Until that moment, you're sitting there staring at what we thought the picture of #2 was, because it never went out to the picture folder itself to see, well, what does that issue look like? It never had to, because you never asked to look at it. The only thing asking for it was the grid, and the grid's already got its thumbnail. It's a separate image. You could, in theory, get to a situation where the images you've cached as your thumbnails are out of sync with the reality. Should that ever happen to you, or you're just feeling persnickety, by all means, feel free to go here to your Public Documents folder. Under that is Human Computing. That's where these things are all stored by default, and do great damage to your thumbnails folder. You can nuke the entire thing if you want. Just blow it away. It will not hurt our feelings or the performance of the program in any way, other than the most imperceptible ways. It will absolutely recreate itself mere moments later. So here, let's go back to that folder now that I've now viewed a couple new titles. Oh wait, look, what do we have? We have a thumbnails folder again, and what's in it? Here's the 48 pixel size, and for our old friend Pharaoh's DK for Fantastic Four, right? It just had to rebuild just the ones that it saw us doing. So if you are sitting there saying, hey, you guys have got an old version of a given picture, what I'd say is, if you're sure that we haven't fixed it and you've already reported it to us and we're just jerks because we haven't gotten on it, well, we might have disagreed with you, but just as possible is you might be still looking at your own old thumbnail. So if that happens to you, blow away your thumbnails folder, let it download the new pictures and the whole thing, and then see if we still have something that we need to correct, in which case, get on our back and we'll try to make that right. All right. Well, I think that's all I've got time for today. Unfortunately, the sun just went down, so I guess I'll be having my beer in the dark. But anyway, guys, I hope you had a terrific New Year's. Don't forget, we do have the holiday sale going on here. If anyone is interested in any of the stuff I talked about there, any rando scanners, Chrome tablets, Android tablets, or an old Mac Mini at beyond bargain basement prices. Put my number up here one more time. If you don't see it, the Mac Mini is on eBay right now, but honestly, if any of the customers watching this one want to grab it first, you guys get first dibs. I'll just cancel the auction. And for the rando barcode scanners, if they don't find a home by the end of the week, they're just going into the, they will become e-waste like the rest of it, because although in theory, they're perfectly good scanners, and I might need a barcode scanner in my life because they're awfully handy to have. The reality of my life is that we have enough barcode scanners because we sell them. It's kind of like I have enough free comic book day comics. It's just one of those things in my life I'm not really looking to buy more of because I have a stack this tall behind me. So that's the way I am with barcode scanners, where like if you're not working for me, if you're just kind of a piece of clutter saying, hey, what's this barcode scanner? Well, it's one of our old product samples from like the vendor we didn't go with. Although the scanner works, I can't do anything with it that I'm not already doing with the 3 scanners that are already on my desk. So anyway, if that will help you in any way, let us know. We'll make that happen. All right, guys, that will do it. And we will talk to you another time. Take care. Bye-bye.